afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second Germ of Life webinar. My name is Panagiotis Saranti from the University of Patras, the lead partner of the Germ of Life project, and I will be coordinating today's meeting. So it is a pleasure to welcome participants from across Europe, representing public authorities, researchers, and policymakers, procurement experts, environmental managers, and innovation actors. So what we are aiming here to do is to showcase the importance of climate-compatible governance and implementation to the Mediterranean regions. So today's webinar is titled Climate-Compatible Procurement, Co-Design Approaches and Foundations of Vulnerability Assessment in the Germ of Life project. So let's start with a brief introduction that I have prepared for today's seminar. So, as you know, let's start with let me briefly remind you what our Germ of Life project is about. So, as you know, Germ of Life is a Euromed project that aims to support Mediterranean regions in moving from reactive drought management to preventative data-driven approaches. So this project integrates climate analytics, drought prediction, vulnerability assessment, and innovation procurement mechanisms to help region plans adapt and respond more effectively to climate pressures. So at its core, Germ of Life project is about turning scientific knowledge into practical tools that can be used by regional authorities and stakeholders. So this seminar builds directly on our previous webinar, the first one, where we focus on drought indices, forecasting models, and pilot implementations. So in that first session, we established the scientific foundation for understanding drought risk and how drought is monitored, predicted, and interpreted. So today, we take the next step. So we move from understanding risk to enabling action by looking at governance tools, procurement systems, and stakeholder engagement, as well as the beginning of our vulnerability assessment tools. So, why does this topic matters? As climate pressures intensify across Mediterranean regions, identifying risk is no longer enough. So regions need procurement systems that support climate adaptation. They need governance frameworks that enable the uptake of nature-based solutions. And of course, they also need analytical tools that help prioritize actions based on vulnerability. So climate-compatible procurement, co-design, and vulnerability assessment are therefore key enablers for turning climate strategies into real-world implementation. But what are we focusing on here? Our webinar today. So today's webinar focusing on 3 interactive pillars. First, we have climate-compatible procurement, as mentioned before. We analyze how procurement practices can support the deployment of nature-based solutions. Secondly, we focusing on co-design and co-creation, so ensuring that tools and platforms respond to real regional and stakeholder needs. And thirdly, we take a look at the foundation of vulnerability assessment within Germ of Life, which provide the analytic backbone for decision making. So together, these elements form a practical framework for climate resilient planning. And just a reminder, what we envision this webinar to focus on as when it comes to stakeholders, who is this webinar for? It's designed for the diverse audience, including public authorities and procurement officers, policymakers and regional planners, as well as environmental managers and researchers, and of course, innovation actors working on nature-based solutions. That is one of the key parts that we are presenting today. So regardless of the participants' background today, today's session will help you understand how governance, stakeholder engagement, and scientific assessment come together within the framework of our project, Germ of Life. Let's briefly review today's agenda as well. We will begin with presentation of stakeholder-driven co-design and co-creation, followed by innovation procurement for natural-based solutions, and we will have a keynote presentation of public procurement or natural-based solutions. And in the second part, we will also have the foundations of the Germ of Life vulnerability assessment approach. And of course, we will end this webinar today with a QA session where each participant is more than welcome to ask the questions and create some kind of dialogue with our presenters. So briefly, our today's speakers, of course, I am doing the coordination of this webinar, but we have Mr. Vincenzo Di Maria from Ubitel, who will represent the co-design and co-creation approach using Germ of Life. We have Mr. Matteo Colombo, who will introduce the innovation procurement platform for nature-based solutions. We have Dr. Francesco Molinari, who is an independent policy research and advisor, who will deliver today's keynote on public procurement of nature-based solutions. And of course, we have from our consortium, Mr. Miltiades Amasiades from DOSOFT, who will introduce the vulnerability assessment framework of Germ of Life, and Mr. Michalis Samouris from the University of Patras, who will explain the DHI index and its role in the vulnerability assessment. So we thank our speakers for contributing in their experience today in the day session. So generally, just sum up how today fits in Germ of Life. So today's webinar is a crucial step on the overall Germ of Life journey. So after establishing the scientific basis for broad monitoring and forecasting, we are now developing the governance, procurement, and analytical tools that will allow regions to act on the knowledge that we have provided. So this progression from science to tools to implementation is central for the project impulse. So let's begin the session with this context in mind. We are now ready to begin with the first presentation. So before we begin, I would like to briefly note that due to some last-minute adjustments, there will be a slight change in order of today's agendas. We will start with a presentation of done by Mr. Miltiades Amasiades, and then we will proceed with the rest of the program as originally structured. Thank you very much for your understanding. So with that, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Miltiades Amasiades from DOSOFT to open the technical part of today's webinar with introduction into the vulnerability assessment approach in Germ of Life. So Miltiades, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Yes, do you have my presentation or shall I share? Share. Can you see it? Yes, no?
Not yet.
No. No. Can you see my presentation now?
No.
No? Don't know what else to do. I've pressed share, right? Application.
You're not sharing anything at this point.
Yeah, but why?
But yeah, what you want to share.
Now?
Something is coming.
Yes. Is that okay now?
Yes.
In full screen yet.
Okay, I will go full screen. Okay? Good. Right. First of all, thank you very much for attending this second webinar from Germ of Life. And please accept my apologies for changing the order since I have an urgent medical appointment to attend, personal. That's why I need to start. And if there are any questions, I'm sure that there are people like Professor Athanasiou, Panayota, Matteo, that they can answer for the VAT platform that we are building. So The key parts of the Germ of Life platforms, as we call them, we have three major platforms. It's the Drought Risk Monitoring and Prediction Service. That's a software that covers the pipeline process and calculation of drought indicators and uses machine learning models to forecast drought indicators and soil moisture. It is the vulnerability assessment tool, the one I'm going to give you an overview of what it is and where we stand, which is an open source software, easily scalable, and depending on stakeholders' needs, coupled with advanced security policies. And of course, it will undergo a penetration and vulnerability assessment test prior to be given to end users. And we have the innovation and procurement platform that Matteo will give a speech. These three platforms are interconnected, and you will see later on the interconnection. So at the moment, let's stay at VAT. The VAT is fed by the inputs from the drought prediction, the first platform, and the machine learning outputs. And it's not a tool. We named this VAT, Vulnerability Assessment Tool, but actually it's a platform because, and an integral part, of course, of Germ of Life, because apart from just giving a drought index and the vulnerability assessment index, it has a code sharing area where interested parties and stakeholders and experts from the pilot users can interact between them and exchange opinions and ideas about their case. It has been the platform, it's nearly ended now. The development, I mean, it has been built on using open source technologies, implementing also a web and mobile application. It receives risk information, AI-based, as we said, from the machine learning outcomes in the form of indices, calculate risks based on historical data and real-time sensor data that from the sensors that we have in all 4 pilots in the project, and includes a dashboard with visualization capabilities based on KPIs identified and questionnaires and analysis that has been done with stakeholders. The process is, if I may say, the vulnerability is a key component of any drought risk assessment. So the process and the roadmap that we had followed is that we have defined the sectors in Germ of Life, agricultural systems, domestic water supply systems, etc. In the 4 pilots, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. We have defined dimensions like social economic infrastructure. We have defined vulnerability indicators for each of these dimensions based on several questionnaires that we have analyzed the questionnaires that we have received. We have been enabled in several and extensive, we think, workshops with experts and co-workshop sharing opinion. We incorporate sensor-based meteorological data, past historical data, Copernicus data, SATCOM data, in order to derive the indices we use in order to calculate the vulnerability assessment. We have all taken part in the UI, UX, and content. Dotsoft is leading this task and the development, but I must stress that this is done with the great help and a lot of work from Ubitel and Infotrend, Ubitel in Spain and Infotrend in Cyprus. And actually, in Infotrend, we have also the central data center of the Germ of Life system based on pure green energy servers that have been purchased specifically for the project. Data fusion techniques in order to proceed, and impact scores and projection to statistics. Now, this is one of the major architecture diagrams. So you see, we have Atos and CMCC and on KPS working on the drought risk prediction. The risk outcome is machine learning based on machine learning algorithms. We have the collaborative vulnerability assessment tool in the middle, calculating based on questionnaires and analysis of social economic infrastructure, governance, environment, and farming, and work and opinions that came from experts from the 4 pilots. We calculate the drought hazard, the the vulnerability indicators, and the outcome is going to the third module of the Germ of Life overall platform, innovation procurement platform for NBS that Matteo from Ubitel will tell you. Now you see in the middle with the middleware layer for data management and services platform. We have structural databases below. Every pilot has its own database. We have tables for every pilot. We have aggregate tables for data coming and correlated from all 4 pilots. And we have also data coming from the machine learning and the questionnaires. All that infrastructure is based on a green server using Linux operating system. We have 2 VMs. The way we have designed the architecture, it's the database VM and the application and web VM. It is a GIS functionality and software, open source software on that. Database is MariaDB, firewalls in front. And as I said, everything is stored and operating from Infotrend premises and under ISO 27001 security protocol. So we are also covered in terms of security issues. Here again, it's another view from the architecture and the digital infrastructure, showing also below the input that we have, like sensors, cameras, images, GPS, satellite, on-field sensors, etc., which complements the architecture I showed you before. As I said, everything is open source. So we have React for the front end, React JavaScript for the front end, Drupal CMS, backend, and the data hub. Everything is pure open source. Python scripts in cooperation with the University of Patras and for the satellite data and other data, and running under Linux, Ubuntu, but it can go to any actual operating system. So it's fully transferable, fully expandable. We can cater for more pilots or more users afterwards. The way it has been designed, it's fully transferable and fully open. Based on the indicators, in webinar 1, they've spoken more about these indicators, but now what we are using is the SPI in order to calculate the VI index out as one of the outputs of the vulnerability assessment tool. It's the standard SPI, which is the standardized precipitation evaporization index. The NDVI, which is the normalized difference vegetation index, and the DHI, the drought hazard index. We have Professor Athanasiou and Matteo also here, and from what I see, that they are experts on that, so they can tell you more if there are questions about these indices. Now, as we told you, we start from the left-hand side, like historical time series, real-time conditions, forecast mode, and we go towards the right, using machine learning algorithms and computational analysis, and we end up on the right-hand side with calculation of after assessing past, current, and future drought conditions. And the output on the right-hand side is the one that feeds the vulnerability assessment tool. The VI, as we call it, is the index that we calculate as an outcome, and it comprises of F plus D/A, where F is the frequency with which the area experiences a specific DCI category. That's a combined SPI and DVI, and provide an algorithm for the calculation of parameter F. The D is the dependence of the area on the specific activity, and A is the ability to cope with drought. Now, I'm an electrical engineer programmer. As I said, Professor Agiou can tell you, or Michalis also can tell you more about that. But the actual result at the end of the day is if Y is greater than 1, area is vulnerable to drought. Less than 1 is less vulnerable and better adaptive capacity. And here is the it's not layers, it's how can I say, the lines of percentages and variances. So from 0 to 100, and based on the factor and the FD and A, the outputs are calculated. And let me just show you some of the screen. These are not mock-ups, these are actual screens of the vulnerability assessment tool. So let me just show you some of the screens as outcomes. So this is a live map. One of the screens is a live map, data map based on the data. Below, you can see the vulnerability risk. It's like an arrow going from red to green. Here's another screen about contacts, and based on the questions, because we had a detailed questionnaire answered by more than 40 experts from the pilots. So we plot also the outcomes of the questionnaires and as GIS layers. Here is the registration, the first screen for the registration of company name, number, registration type, and etc. Here is a heat map, live data viewer, and based on topics like air relative humidity, air temperature, normalized difference, vegetation index, rainfall, wind direction, and wind speed. We are plotting several graphs, and we have several heat maps and several outcomes from the analysis that we do. This is the research, what we call research participation portal. We have the 4 end users interacting between them, and they can use this as a collaborative space where they can exchange ideas, where they can give the results and for their area of where the pilot took place, and discuss between them and exchange ideas. Well, one of the reasons for using Drupal is that it's a very good open source tool for enabling such intercommunications. This is another screen where we have, for example, you see on top Italy, temporary points, and we have, for example, for Italy, social factors, economic factors, in infrastructure, governance, environmental and farming practices, and at the end, based on what the Italian pilot has chosen, you see underneath total weights and, for example, for the social factors, weights and values based on the questionnaires and the importance they give for each factor. And here is the tool. You see, it goes from blue to red. It's changing, and it shows the index and the assessment. Of course, everything can be reported and saved as a PDF, printed and exported, so that all the interested parties can have a look and see it. And basically this is my presentation as an introduction for the VAT. It's, as I said, we are at the final stages. We are integrating modules and systems. And from what I know is that around February there will be another webinar more specific about the platform and running it and showing it live. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, and much appreciate your attendance and attention.
For this clear and structured introduction. Could you stop sharing your screen right now? Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So you have provided us with an important overview of how vulnerability assessment fits within the Germ of Life framework and how it supports decision making. I don't know if there are right now any specific questions for Miltiades, because as mentioned earlier, he will not be able to join us later on due to some emergency that has occurred. In any case, I will ask all participants here to share with us any questions they may add, and I will share with you Miltos later if needed, in order to gather participants' input.
I cannot hear you, Panayota.
It's not just me, right?
Yeah, Panayota, we cannot hear you.
That is a co-creation expert from Spain. Mr. Vicento will present the stakeholder-driven co-design and co-creation approach that we used in Germ of Life, explaining how regional needs and perspectives were integrated into the development of project tools and later on the platform. So thank you very much. Vincenzo, the floor is yours. You can now start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Panayota. And I'm going to be sharing, just a second, my screen. You should be able to see the presentation.
Perfect.
Okay.
We can see your full screen presentation. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
However,
you can all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Can you hear me or not?
it's
Yeah.
my problem. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the invitation for this moment of reflection and sharing results. My name is Vincenzo Di Maria. I'm actually Italian. I've been collaborating closely with Ubitel on the co-design process of the Germ of Life. And my involvement started about a year ago. It was around October, November, and they brought me in a way to sort of challenge some of the initial assumption and technical assumptions that were made on the project, because it was already an idea, a vision, an infrastructure. And as Professor Anastasiades said, they had already an idea on how to build all the platform and all the system. And my job was making sure that not just that the project and the platform work, but they actually work for the people that have to use it. So this stakeholder engagement process started with pilot cases and the case studies on the 4 different countries. And given the project objectives and the key business requirements where the Germ of Life project wanted to go, we took on the design and facilitation of 2 online participatory workshops to gather insights, feedback. And I'm a process expert. I'm a designer myself. I come from a service design background. I'm not a domain expert in drought. I've been working on social innovation projects that relate to vulnerability. However, I cannot say I'm a domain expert. My job here was making different people with more technical or more policy type of background work together to make sense of this platform. So increasing clarity, increasing share visibility, and trying to match the different agendas of the partners involved. On one side, of course, we wanted to build something that was feasible, that we could build and implement technically, but we were also very aware of the desirability aspects not just on its usefulness, but also how it's usable to the final users. And of course, we have ideas, well, how can this be sustainable long-term as a platform, even beyond the Germs of Life project? I believe the complex systems do not emerge from top-down control or decisions, but from interaction among their parts. And as I say, I was involved in this part of the activities. Some of the things I'm going to be sharing, they were already anticipated in the previous presentation, so that it's a good assist not to repeat some of the aspects. But by the time I remember with Matteo, Juan, I was presented to the project, he was presented to me the technical side of the story. And my objective was to translate the technical domain language into boundary objects that could be used as framework for the workshop. So to me, as I got a design background, was also somehow clear the technical assumption and the intentions. How do we make it clear for the people that are involved every day in the use of it without necessarily know all the backstage operation? So the aim was integrate the specific needs, cultural aspects of the local partners and the case studies and the tech requirements. So the first thing I did, it was translating in a language, in a shape, in a visual language that was helping me understanding. And so talking about the Germs of Life platforms, the system that's been presented so far, from the inputs coming from the drought risk prediction, and that is AI generated. So I generate output that go into the vulnerability assessment tool, that go eventually into the innovation procurement platforms. We already spoke about the vulnerability assessment tool. Matteo later will talk more about the IPP. But these, of course, it's also ending in a better procurement process eventually on how to sorting those organizations that provide those innovative solutions. So this was just a sense-making exercise, try to reformulate the technical language in order to embrace more people. And of course, as a designer, and usually for some of you who may not work with designers, or may not be designers, usually we tend to reflect, we think of designers as somebody that work on the superficial level on what is concrete and tangible, like the interfaces. And that's true. We do work on user experiences and user interfaces, and we move pixel and we change the color of buttons. But before doing that, there is a dense and intense kind of deep analysis of what are the key user needs and the product or project objectives. And then we build on top of that strategy, a scope and a structure that works as a bit of an architecture for what it comes above. So we were working this co-design workshop I led on these aspects, on this more the structure and the functionalities and the needs. And we were touching on indicators on the different dimensions that Professor Anastasis already commented. So the two workshops that were held in November 24, and the key objectives were clarifying needs from the case studies and the different country partners, reviewing the flows that were already being plotted and somehow imagined by the technical teams, defining indicators, so looking at those different domains and trying to define relevant indicators for each of the partners, sharing case studies and trying to get a bit of a sense on how this tool corresponds to the specific needs of the case studies from the different countries, and providing feedback, accepting feedback from partners in order to adjust our design and then development sort of decision making. So the set of the workshop, where many people participating, they're mostly the partners from Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal, with different expectations and contents, of course, to bring to the design table. And we, of course, had some initial requirements already in our head. We know that there are some must-haves, some should-haves, some good to have. If we have all the money in the world, we could make Germs of Life platforms and system brilliant commercial project that can be replicated and sold all around the world. But at this stage, we're trying to make it work for the people that are partnering on the project. And as I say, we took the vulnerability assessment tool or platform, as we said before, and we tried to look at the different phases and at the different steps. And we look as well at the layer of the user interaction. What is the key user, the policy, the decision-making policymaker, a local level need to do in order to do what? What is the system doing in terms of platform and tool? What are the backstage operations? And we also were challenging some of the phases, some of the moments, some of the interaction to make it more robust, to make it more anti-fragile today, we should say. So we did this with VAT, but we also did this with the innovation procurement platform. So we streamlined what is the actual experience of using, from accessing to exploring the mitigation strategies, to call for specific solution, and then choosing a strategy. And then it will follow the procurement part, of course. And then what is the system doing? How is it integrated and connected to the VAT platform? And what are the questions? And it sparked a really dense, interesting conversation. The other part, which took us quite a lot, because it was we were referring before to questionnaires that were sent to the partners to understand the sort of dimensions and key indicators. Here, I'm just showing you what we actually did on a Miro board online, working in an interactive way during a Zoom session like this. And it was about agreeing on relevant set of indicators for all the different partners, because it was a challenging and lengthy process. It wasn't easy. We were giving a few things for granted, but not everything was relevant in the same way. And of course, shifting or switching from drought risk, which is something, let's say, easy to measure, to vulnerability index was a bit of a game changer, because there were so many other factors and so many other indicators to take in account. As you see here, maybe you don't see very clearly in the slide, but I can show you later the Miro board. Here there are on the left-hand side in the column, the 4 case studies, and we went through the lead of each of the case studies to look at the social factors, the economic factors, the infrastructure level, the governance, the environmental factors, and the farming practices. And then within each of those dimensions, there were several different indicators that could be turned on or off according to the very specific needs. Because let's be honest with ourselves, vineyards in Greece and river basins in Spain, or the river parks in Piedmont in Italy, they may have something in common, but they also have different way to measure vulnerability and assess the risk for it. And we also tried to start with mockups, visual mockups. They were the early stage drafted mockups by the partners. We also had some interaction on Figma. And of course, we're trying to understand what is the flow, what is the way the partners are going to receive this data, how they're going to navigate, how they may use it. And it was a very interesting feedback session as well, by showing not perfect prototypes, because of course they were made just to spark the conversation, but were the perfect boundary objects to a discussion around what will work and what may not. That led, of course, to input into the key project deliverables and the final, let's say, work package outputs, but also adjusted into what were later developed as design outputs. So it was a way to inform the sort of processes. The thing I really take away of this project, which is not easy because I worked on a lot of different projects with multi-stakeholders, multi-agenda, is that co-design was not just a phase, was not just something that happened in November 2024, and that's it. And then back to business as usual. But the team actually took the approach and realized a third workshop and carry on this sort of co-design way of working together as a process throughout all the other workshops. At this stage, I wasn't involved anymore, but I could see this germ of life in terms of co-design, this little bean, this little seed sprouting new initiatives. And that's how the team went iterating, visualizing, and collaborating across different platforms, not just on Figma, which may be too technical and obscure for some people, for some of the stakeholders, but on Miro, using a language that is accessible to everybody, still not losing the sense of the key technical decisions that needed to be implemented around all the mockups. And you already saw the final interface. These are all the stepping stone, the process, the iterative process and the prototype validation. And I'm really glad to say that the Germ of Life project didn't treat co-design just as a phase, but as a way of working throughout the project. If you have any question or feedback on the actual process and the actual workshops, I'm very happy to share as well something that looks like this. Don't be scared. It's just the platform that we actually use to work collaboratively on all the different phases of the workshop. Like this one was workshop 1, and we went through first the visualization of the VAT, and we put post-its and questions. We went into the different dimensions or domain, start asking ourselves uncomfortable questions. Are these indicators still relevant and adequate to assess vulnerability? So a bit of challenging, which is what design thinking is all about. And then we did that tedious work, but very necessary work with each of the partners. So with vineyards in Greece, we went through, okay, this may not be that relevant. Economic factor for vineyards, more relevant. And we tried also to have a bit of a model on how we extract the different indicators. So this is the process that I know is quite tedious, and I don't want to bother you too much with details that we went through. And as you can see, this happened as well on workshop 2, where, of course, we had already some guidelines on how it should work, but we also ask our participants to reflect and provide feedback on this. This is an interact. I'm not going to open it now, but it's an interactive mockup. So it was interesting for me because this is my job, but I think I learned a lot from my fellow domain experts. And at the end, I say I can learn. I know a bit more about draft risk and vulnerability index across Europe. So thank you for the opportunity to work on the project.
Vincenzo, and thank you for being here and showing us how this whole co-design process that we created earlier on in the project really focus on specific aspects that we later analyze, and also how each contribution from the partnership itself and the stakeholders created the overall things and how we moved forward with the project tools that we are now in the process of finalizing. There are actually a couple of questions in the Q&A chat room. So as we move along, we will have a dedicated Q&A session later on. You are free to review them and be prepared to give your answers. So thank you very much. And we proceed with our next speaker, that is Mr. Mateo Colombo, that has worked from Ubitel, Spain. Mateo will present the innovation procurement in action, and from EU guidance to Germ of Life innovation procurement platform for network-based solutions. And he will explain how EU procurement guidance is translating into practical tools for regional authorities. So Matteo, please go ahead. Thank you for sharing your screen. You are in full mode. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. So thank you very much, Panayota, and thank you all for joining this webinar. That is the final phase of the first 2 years project. As we have seen, we have produced a lot of outputs, tangible outputs. Being an Interreg, I'm really surprised and happy to have seen such a huge work that is also tangent to some research aspects for that is not so common, no, in Interreg. Yeah, so just to wrap up here, so good afternoon, everyone. This session is about public procurement in action. It is a bridge between what has been said by Vincenzo, Miltos, and what will be presented by Dr. Molinari afterwards. So here we talk about public procurement in action. So as you probably know, public procurement is often seen as a technical process, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful levers we have to drive innovation, sustainability, and resilience across Europe. Today, I will present the Germ of Life Innovation Procurement Platform, that it is designed to make procurement a driver of nature-based solutions, especially in drought-affected ecosystems. We will explore the European framework. I will start with some input the current trends, the best practices, and most importantly, how Germ of Life is building a platform to connect public buyers and innovative suppliers. So the foundation of procurement in Europe remain the 2014 directives that are about concession, public procurements, utilities. And these were set up by the Commission to enable flexibility, transparency, and legal certainty. But the stability is not enough. The European Commission has issued new guidance, and one of these guidance was the initial driver where the innovation procurement platform were conceived, to look and to encourage innovation-friendly procurement. So this toolkit are the EAFIP that provide step-by-step guidance and templates, Horizon Europe that most of you knows, that embed procurement into research and innovation funding, encourage pre-commercial procurement and public procurement of innovative solutions. And procurement is now explicitly tied to flagship policies like the Green Deal and the Digital Europe, making sustainability and digital transformation a central criteria. I don't want to mention now the SAFE program, the one on defense, but also in that case, unfortunately, also in that case, joint and innovation procurement will be an important aspect for the next phase of the European Union life. And then capacity building initiatives, competence centers, training programs, cross-border pilots like Germ of Life. All these are helping the public buyers in reducing the risk aversion and build confidence. About the adoption, across Europe, we see different speeds of adoption. We see national innovation procurement frameworks in several member states. Obviously, not obviously, but as often happen, Nordic countries are front runners, using functional requirements and outcome-based contracts quite widely. But Southern Europe has increased the uptake, often through EU-funded pilots. And cross-border procurements are growing, especially in health, smart cities, and digital education. This shows that innovation procurement is becoming a mainstream, but with regional nuances. The important trend we see is the growth of cross-border procurements. Why does this matter? Because when public buyers from different member states join forces, they put their demand and create larger and attractive markets for innovative suppliers. And this is very important for SMEs and startups that can take this as an opportunity to expand, to make them know themselves and expand internationally. We see this most clearly in three sectors, all around the concept of smart cities, in health, in smart cities in terms of urban mobility solutions, energy efficient infrastructure, open data platform, but also in digital education, schools, university, where these actors are collaborating through e-learning platform to procure e-learning platform, tutorial tools, and interoperable classroom. The benefits are clear. Larger markets mean greater cost effectiveness and economies of scale. Innovation diffuse faster, grow member states, and procurement aligns more strongly with EU priorities, like, as I said, the Green Deal, the Digital Europe, and Horizon Europe. So, from this experience, some best practices are emerging. We have pre-commercial procurement that remains a flagship tool with over 70% of contracts awarded to SMEs. Innovation partnerships that allow long-term collaboration between public buyers and suppliers, outcome-based contracting that links payment to performance indicators. For example, in health, the reduced hospital visit, the lower admission, all these are indicator or are all outcome-based indicator. And open data interoperability that are increasingly required in tenders to avoid lock-in and foster SME competition. These practices show how procurement is evolving toward collaboration, performance, and openness. So going to the innovation procurement platform scope and tools, we now see the scope of the Germ of Life platform that is contributing to the preparatory step of the NBS, National Network-Based Solution, related tenders. So with this platform, we work on the left side of the process, the initial one. And this is done for procurers because it guides and helps in formalization of tender specification, providing information like ecosystem type, drought risk categorization, vulnerability indicators, strategies, and what it does, it differently from what is done so far. It enables accurate, data-driven call for tender. For the suppliers, it supports matching solution to ecosystem type and drought risk, provide guidance, evidence of track record, and receive notification of tenders. Suppliers in Germ of Life, in IPP, can also open a dialogue with procurers when need to require further development. The platform integrates with the vulnerability assessment tool, even though it has been conceived as a standalone tool, open source standalone tool. So the other organization in Europe can decide whether to have the full Germ of Life ecosystem, let's call it like this, or just tools, specific tools. And IPP is one of those. So it would be deployed as open source. It can be customized. It can be scaled up, improved. But yeah, in the way we interpret in Germ of Life, this is integrated with the vulnerability assessment tool. It combines monitoring data, ancillary maps, hazard algorithms, multi-criteria analysis. It produces vulnerability reports and suggests mitigation strategies. The two platforms, the IPP and the VAT, basically are marketplace and decision support tool for drought resilience. Our innovative procurement platform focuses on two main pathways. The primary, that is a responsive procurement of novel nature-based solution with proven effectiveness in drought scenarios. And the secondary, so procurements that need a specific solution, are able to trigger the development or the adaptation of nature-based solution to specific requirement. For this work, the public procurers must have a clear functional specification, while supplier must understand the problem, supported by data indicator. And this is where the IPP entered into the game. In the project, we have, I said before that one of the important parameters is the type of ecosystem and the mitigation strategies. In Germ of Life, we tested the solution in 4 ecosystems, each of them represented by a pilot in 4 countries, 4 MED countries. And for each ecosystem, collaboratively, this was not a co-design, but again, a huge collaborative work. The consortium selected the most relevant mitigation strategies. Here you can see an excerpt of a table that we came out about the agriculture and vineyard, and this then has been used to feed the database of the application. The same has been done for the other. The platform has been developed in 3 phases. The phase one is the solution design and co-design that we have seen. The phase two is the platform development, an open source scalable with a database of technologies and NBS solution. We have now already uploaded in the database 50 EU and worldwide solution and companies that are already with all the information that is required in order to deploy it in a real use case. And then the phase three that will happen in 2026, that is the pilot testing for procurement processes, and this will be the final stage of the project. So now, this is not a mock-up. Let's say these are a screenshot of the application that I put in a PowerPoint in order to navigate better during this demo. This is the entry point of the IPP. We have the portal. We give the possibility to navigate in 6 languages. No, sorry, 5 languages. English is not part of the project, but we use it as obviously a common way of communicating between countries. But the portal is in Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, and Greek. And I will tell you later some nice feature that it was not envisaged at the proposal stage, but we included thanks to the evolution in the NLP and AI stuff. So now everything is dynamic. These are not static translation of tabs of the portals. Everything is dynamic. So in these 4 languages, the solutions are automatically translated from one language to another. And here we see the procurer type of subscription. We have, let's say, the typical flow to onboard the procurer. Here we are navigating in English, but obviously this is in multiple languages. The last step is where the procurer select the type of categories of interest. Now we have 4 categories of interest: agriculture vineyards, grassland ecosystem, river parks, and water ponds. And these are the pilots, but this, as I said, this can be extended in the future by any organization. And then the procurer can consult innovative solution in 2 ways. As I said at the beginning, exploring existing solution and on-demand solution. Exploring the existing solution, the procurer can go through categories, simply using the search engine by describing what they are looking for, and the countries. These are the countries the solution belong to. So as you can see, we have found solutions relevant to, in this case, all the categories in various countries. And here, for example, is the Italian version. Here is the Portuguese version, the Spanish version, and the Greek version. As I said, the information you can see here in the table is not manually entered, but it's dynamic. In this case, for example, we explore this UK-based company, UK-based solution. We have an information sheet of the company with all the information, the mail address, and what is the solution about. And the procurer can ask for a quote. Let's say we are in a pre-commercial procurement, so it is a quote to understand more technical, no, than economic. And this is the way, for example, the request appears in 3 languages. The central one is English, and then we have Greek and Portuguese. We have the procurer can input the requirement, the timeline, a budget range, and the technical requirement. Here you can see a button that is the VAT report retrieval. And this is where is the contact point when deployed in the same server infrastructure, where the procurer, for example, in Junta de Andalucía, is collaborating with the department in charge for the vulnerability and drought risk assessment. The work done for calculating of the various indexes that you have seen before by the Department of Drought Management, for example, this report will be retrieved, will be available for the procurer to retrieve and to kind of attach as additional information to the companies that we have to prepare the solution. That's why I said at the beginning, this is a data-driven type of procurement, because in a simple step, companies can have very huge information to really understand the problem and to provide the right solution. If the solution is not already in the database, the procurer can go to the on-demand request. And here again, he can select the category, the country, they can prefer the preferred company for each category, the solution, and again attach or retrieve a VAT report from VAT. If the VAT, the vulnerability assessment tool with all the infrastructure is not there, the procurer will be asked whether they want to start the process of onboarding also on VAT and all the infrastructure required, or simply they can proceed with the IPP as a standalone tool, as I said before. About the company has a flow, onboarding flow, quite typical. When they reach the point to describe the solution, they can create their own profile. For example, in this case, we have a company that is including a solution into the category of agriculture vineyard, and the specific natural-based solution are cover crops. In this case, the company, for each of the specific MBS, they have a tutorial, a description of what we intend as cover crops, and what the procurer intend as cover crops types, so to align the definitions. And then they can describe textually, in natural language, the solution. This is the final result, and this is the last point. When they describe the solution in English, as they did here, we included an NLP solution. This was not envisaged, as I said before. We have tested many generative AI solution, and finally we opted for a European one from the European Barcelona Supercomputing Center. This is a 4 billion parameters model that was specifically trained in 35 European languages. So you can imagine, and after testing with the pilots, getting feedback, we understood that this outperformed, let's say, other open source like Llama or other, let's say, powerful NLP solutions. It is why? Because the corpora they used in Barcelona to train is based on 35 European languages directly. So here, this is to say that whatever is entered by the company in English in the solution, this can be expanded, and the procurers from any country of Europe can receive the information in their local language. And so this, we think that is, let's say, reduce a huge barrier that could have public procurers into entering this world of innovative solution. As said, everything is already published. The code will be published by the end of the year in GitHub, the open source. But here you have a link. You can access with a demo credential as a procurer, and you can drive and see and make your experience. I hope it was clear. If there are any questions, I'm very welcome, and thank you very much for attending.
Matteo, for this presentation and the comprehensive overview of what the RPP stands for in our project and what we have envisioned with it, and also for the screenshot showcasing the platform at its core basics, and of course for providing the access to the demo. If you could also share it in the chat room so people may want to familiarize themselves while we're also having the next kind of presentations for us. And of course, if there are any questions, people are free to leave it either on the chat box or the Q&A section that we have, and we will answer it towards the end of this webinar. So well, now it's time for our today's keynote presentation. So it's an honor to include our keynote speaker, Dr. Francesco Molinari, that is with us. It's an independent policy researcher and advisor. Dr. Molinari will deliver a keynote speech on public procurement of nature-based solutions, offering a broader policy-oriented perspective on how procurement system can support climate resilience, and sustainable goals. So, Dr. Molinari, we are very pleased to have you with us. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Good afternoon, everyone. I have a few slides with me. There are more than 30 participants right now. I hope I will be able to keep them until the end. Just a few words about myself. I have been involved for more than 15 years in topics related to public procurement, both on the research and the practical side. And I'm also active in a number of Horizon Europe funded projects dealing with the topic. So many of the concepts I've been hearing before me, they are familiar, and I think we can also find additional opportunities to discuss about some of them in the near future. So now let me go to the presentation. I hope you can see my slides and hear my voice. One of the projects I'm involved in, I found it relevant for many reasons. It is named URBRET, and it is a running project from the Horizon Europe program, which has a clear focus on nature-based solutions and public procurement. So I took advantage from a number of opportunities I have already had to deliver contents to the project consortium, to take some slides from previous presentations and use them in my keynote speech today. You can see in front of you the map of Europe with all the cities involved. It's a rather ambitious project, which I don't have the time of going into the details about, but it is, like I said, a lot about public procurement of nature-based solutions, which is the topic of my presentation. This slide comes from a webinar series I recently animated in the context of the project, and would like to send you the message of a wide diversity, if not heterogeneity, of what we name under the common label of nature-based solutions. You can see the examples in front of you, and you can just imagine how complex and articulated can be the process, which is practically mandatory for every public procurement experiment to be started, aiming to define technical requirements, technical specifications for works goods, services that are meant to be the target of public procurement. You know, I don't need to spend time on that. The public sector uses public procurement as the main channel to procure goods, services, and works, but this has to be done within the umbrella of the European and national legislations. Some of the citations came, for example, in the presentation from Matteo. Within this framework, it is particularly complex to handle examples of nature-based solutions like those in front of you as if they could be considered similar to the purchase of series products like computers or cars or any other example of standardized equipment. This is made even more complex by one of the challenges of the project, which is to experiment the purchase of NBS, nature-based solutions, in a group of cities, those that were marked as front runners in the previous slide, and then transfer the knowledge, the documents, the experience to the follower cities also mentioned in that slide. The big questions are those on top of the slide. What is indeed replicable, considering all the varieties and the differences in the context and the local environments where these solutions must be deployed, and how can PPI help? I take the opportunity for a quick note. You may know already that there is an open consultation from the European Commission, opened until mid-January, I think the 20th of January, on the reform of the European directives on procurement. I think it would be nice if your consortium could prepare a response, an official response to that consultation, offering to the attention of the European Parliament and Commission your point of view on some of the topics I've been hearing about. We will do that on our own, and I believe, because I already went into the details of the questions made in the framework of this consultation, that it will be a learning experience for you guys due to the, let's say, seriousness, I use this expression, of the dilemmas and the challenges the Commission shows to be aware of in the context of this consultation. For example, what could be done to preserve the European sovereignty in a quite high number of different domains, including ICT, thanks to public procurement. This is in line with our own vision in Urbret. How can PPI serve to the purpose of facilitating the transfer of good experiences from one to another location, of course, using the provisions of existing legislation. So we are touching a little bit what Matteo was mentioning before as the growing domain of cross-border procurement, but with distance between the different experiments. Actually, nature-based solutions are quite strange beasts, if I can use this expression. As I already showed you with my picture, it is an umbrella term which includes several and quite heterogeneous typologies, driving the attention away from the specific product that is being purchased towards broader questions like, why are we wanting to buy products like those? What are our ultimate goals? And this is also a recent phenomenon, despite the fact that they have been around for about 20 years, if not more. So that what happens in reality is that a low number of competitors are actually attending or participating in the calls for tender. So an initiative like your platform may be positive if properly advertised in the direction of encouraging the manifestation of a number of companies and economic operators in general who may not be experts or at least not yet of the specific domains, but are truly committed to learning more and becoming capable of presenting interesting alternatives to the conventional products and services that otherwise would keep being purchased by the buyers around Europe. A third aspect is that, in our view, there is a clear connection between NBS per se and the domains of urban policy, urban planning, and the practice of urban greening. This is not only because the cities you saw in that slide are the main stakeholders of this project, but I think it is already well documented by literature and evidence from practical examples that when we approach the topic of nature-based solutions, we are to some extent innovating the broad policy approach, the broad planning and implementation approach to what already exists and should be fixed in a certain environment, especially at the urban level. And finally, but not disconnected from the previous point, the implementation of nature-based solutions has evident implications on the well-being of citizens and communities. This goes also beyond the definition of ecosystem services provided by some of those solutions, which, as you know, also includes cultural and social aspects as part of their deliveries. There is more, and this more can be left open, or urban planners may decide to draw the line at a more extended level of engagement of the citizens and communities, responding to the obvious challenge of being engaged despite stakeholder fatigue, despite the limitations of the existing tools and instruments for civic participation. But the question remains if these are interventions that are going to change the urban landscape up to the point of affecting the well-being of people who are residents in a certain area. Why don't we ask them to be involved in the decision-making process as well? In this framework, we know there are barriers which derive from the nature of strange beasts, like I said, that nature-based solutions have. Some of these barriers have been mapped in a recent or relatively recent publication of the European Commission, which is listed as a footnote in this slide. Three main categories of barriers, probably more, can be identified. On the institutional side, the novelty of the domain, of the topic in the domain of planning and public investments, identifies a lack of frameworks and also clashes with the silo-style approach of many public entities dealing separately, also from the procurement point of view, with topics which, however, in the broader vision, need to be considered jointly. A recent example, in 2024, the city of Lisbon won the Innovation Procurement Prize of the Procura Plus network for the good practice example of implementing a quality management system according to the ISO rule, which, practically speaking, makes the different departments, the energy department, the environmental department, and so on and so forth of the city hall talk to one another every time new investments are to be planned, which include, among others, the approach of nature-based solutions. This is something that can be quoted as a good practice example, but of course, more is required to change the mindset of not only the institutions, but especially the people playing roles of top and middle managers in those institutions to move away, like I was saying before, from the logic of what do I need to buy and what are the specifications that I can produce very quickly regarding that something, to another logic which is more outcome-based, outcome-oriented, and also involving, like I said, other components of society, like citizens and communities. There is also already mentioned a market collection of barriers, market-related collection of barriers, which we can photograph by saying that not only the companies, but also those who are considered to be supportive to the growth of companies hasn't yet done what could be done to provide standard specifications of the high-level requirements connected with nature-based solutions. There is already quite a good number of cases and also ongoing efforts, for example, at the level of the IUCN on producing harmonized, if not standardized, technical specifications, but more is needed, and I have no time to spend on top of this as I would like to do. And finally, from the technical point of view, the wide diversity that I already mentioned also complicates the approach to describing the benefits and predicting the benefits which have unavoidably a long-term time span, which has to be contrasted, however, with additional needs for long-term maintenance of these solutions that could not be left alone, or at least have an expected lifetime which is shorter than the comparable non-nature-based options that are still available in the state of the art. So I'm happy to mention that some of these topics, especially how can PPI, public procurement of innovation, contribute to this picture, were handled in a very recent webinar series, which you can find on YouTube. There is a link provided at the bottom of this slide. I will also repeat it in my last slide. I don't want and I don't have the time to go into the details of all these instruments, but it is anyway an opportunity, also because they were just 40 minutes or 1 hour long as webinars, to align your knowledge also about examples of success stories of usage of the tools, the instruments of existing legislation in public procurement for the sake of nature-based solutions purchase. Just to make a quick overview of what emerged from the 5 webinars, each analyzing a different instrument, forgetting about the preliminary market consultations, which are servant to the 4 procurement instruments strictly defined, the competitive dialogue and the competitive procedure with negotiation, which you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, are the preferred ways to purchase solutions that more or less already exist and are therefore confronted with those that don't exist yet and that can be better purchased by the use of innovation partnership and pre-commercial procurement calls for tender. On the left-hand side, we have anyway the advantage that despite their complexity, we can to some extent already rely on a reasonably clear collection of buyer requirements which can be used and or revised in the process of tendering according to these two instruments you see on the left-hand side, while on the right-hand side, the initial specifications are relatively loose and therefore needing more attention and interaction to become precise. So the left-hand side, the two instruments on the left-hand side, we can say they are more oriented to off-the-shelf solutions which are complex, but in some case controllable in their specifications, while on the other hand, we have solutions that not existing yet, as they are predicted to be created, need more work on structuring the activities leading to their identification and ultimately delivery. Examples, these are of course just a minority of the possible applications, but I think examples can be suggestive of what the message should be from my presentation. You can see from these examples that the technologies we are talking about are not new, are in some cases quite mature, although there are examples, the green walls for instance, where there is continuous innovation from the side of the suppliers of these solutions. So the intuition is that thanks to the competitive dialogue or the competitive procedure with negotiation, procurers can start from an initial idea and improve it along the way without finalizing the award of the tender in one shot. Then there are differences, complexities, nuances, but this is the message. So bearing in mind the first slide I started from, there can be interest and also advantage for the procurers in specializing in these two instruments, which may have the merit of facilitating the achievement of a better match between initial requirements, why am I doing this, why do I want to commission these NBS solutions, and the final outcomes of the tender. On the other side, the innovation partnership and the pre-commercial procurement are more looking at innovations that are not yet current in the situation we start from, and they may also have requirements in terms of research and development that by definition knows where it starts from, but doesn't know where it actually lands because of all the complexities and the uncertainties of using R&D to achieve certain results. So in the innovation partnership, but especially in the pre-commercial procurement case, the predominant will, I could say, more than need from the public procurer should be to facilitate the expansion of the market, the creation of innovative solutions which can be used not only in the context where the public procurement is launched, but also, as I said, in neighboring cities or more broadly in other contexts outside the pilot case. Last complex but also summative table of this presentation, also adapted from another publication of the European Union, but also based on the answers received from the partners of the Urbret project in an internal survey. This summarizes what I said before. So the preliminary market consultation, I didn't speak much about them, but they have a wide usage potential because they are basically helpful in understanding where the market stays from the point of view of innovation and availability of ready-made solutions, so it can be servant to all the four procurement instruments in this list, while the difference between competitive dialogue and competitive procedure with negotiation. In both cases, there is the idea to refine the requirements and the technical specifications with a dialogue, with a negotiation, depending on the instrument, between the public buyer and the private solution providers before awarding the tender. Here, the difference can be that in the case of competitive dialogue, the starting point is less clear or more vague from the point of view of the buyer. In the case of the second instrument, there are indeed some initial specifications which can be refined and improved during the negotiation. In both cases, we are taking distance from the take it or leave it situation that many buyers know. In conventional tenders, many times you award the best ratio between quality and price, so you are happy on the one hand that the best value for money was achieved thanks to the procurement procedure, but on the other hand, you know and you cannot share that much that there are some parts of the winning bid which are not actually needed. And there was no way to discuss with the buyer, with the provider, on ways to remove those parts of the bid which were not of interest for the buyer. Thanks to instruments that establish this conversional approach, which is perfectly legal if done with full respect of the transparency and parity of treatment principles of the European and national legislation, thanks to this approach, we can predict that the value for money will be increased when the final solutions are achieved. Same goes for the other two instruments, where the main difference is that in the case of the innovative partnership, there is a landing point on buying the solution that has been prototyped along the line, while there is no commitment in that sense in the pre-commercial procurement instrument. Said better, innovative partnership can optionally lend under certain conditions into the buying of the prototype if it fits into the original expectations of the buyer, the pre-commercial procurement being a bit kept outside of the provisions of European legislation should and must stop before the commercial phase. I am done. I hope that my speech has created scope for questions. Happy to answer to those questions. Now a bit of advertising on where you can find a general webinar on understanding nature-based solutions, and like I said, the 5 webinars I facilitated. Curiously, they have the same title as the previous presentation from Matteo, Innovation Procurement in Action, and you can also find links to contact the project using the QR codes that are displayed here. I thank you very much for your attention, and I now stop sharing my screen.
Dr. Molinari, for your thought-provoking keynote presentation. I encourage everyone to leave their question in the QA, and of course, we can clearly see the connections that you had with our previous presentation from Mr. Matteo Colombo, and of course, we will have the time later on to further discuss key questions that may arise for both of you regarding procurement and natural base and what we do with this in the project. So briefly, we move along now, and we return actually to the technical foundations of the Germ of Life framework. As we mentioned earlier, there was a slight change in the initial agenda. So at this point, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Michalis Samoris, that is a physicist with a Master of Science and a PhD candidate from the University of Patras, that is the lead partner of the project. Michalis will present the DA, will explain its role within the vulnerability assessment framework of the Germ of Life. As you saw earlier, Mr. Miltiadis and Asasiadis presented the Vulnerability Assessment Foundation, and this corresponds to that. It's the particularly calculation of specific index and its role in the vulnerability assessment. So Michalis, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Panagiotta. Hello, everyone. First of all, can you see my screen and can you hear me?
We can see your screen. It's not in full mode, in full presentation mode.
Okay. Let me. What about now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Michael Samoris. I'm a PhD candidate in the Laboratory of Atmospheric Physics and the University of Patras. I've been participating in the project since October 2024, and I have mainly contributed to the development of the index that I'm going to present you in this presentation. So this is the index that we have developed to evaluate the drought conditions and to monitor the drought in our pilot sites. And you will see how this index connects with the vulnerability assessment that Mr. Anastasiadis presented previously. So my presentation is closer to the things that you saw from Mr. Anastasiadis before. So I will begin with an overview of the index. So this index, the Drought Hazard Index, or DHI, is actually a weighted scoring system based on the drought occurrence percentage of the different drought categories. You can see here with the bold letters the formula. I will explain all the different terms that you see here. First of all, we see the different drought classes. We have the near normal conditions, the moderate droughts, severe droughts, and extreme droughts. And to detect the different drought classes, we need to rely on another index, which is the SPI index, Standardized Precipitation Evapotranspiration Index. And we use this index as the input indicator of DHI. So to calculate DHI, we first need to calculate SPI index. So I will give you a brief introduction to this index. SPI index is a widely used standardized index, frequently used in drought studies. The parameter that this index studies is what we call the water balance, which is the amount of precipitation minus the amount of potential evapotranspiration. As you may know, water both evaporates from the ground and transpires from the vegetation up to the atmosphere. So this index actually studied this parameter, the water balance, and tell us how unusual a given value is relative to a reference period. In our case, the reference period is the 30-year period ranging from 1961 to 1990, which is a standard period used frequently in climatology. So this is a monthly index. After calculating this index, we have monthly SPI values, and each monthly SPI value is classified according to the table that you can see here. So, for example, if we have a monthly value of SPI being lower than -2, then that's an indication of experiencing an extreme drought. So we need this index to detect the different drought classes, to classify each month into the corresponding drought category. Okay, so let's return to the formula of the DHI. You see some different terms here. Okay, we have the different drought categories, and we have to define some weights and ratings values that constitute our formula. Okay, these weights and ratings are equal either to 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now I'm going to explain you how we define and how we calculate these values. To begin with the weights values are fixed, and these fixed values are assigned to the different drought classes. Specifically, normal conditions have a weight equal to 1, moderate drought have a weight equal to 2, and so on until we have our extreme droughts, which have the greater weight value. And why we do that? simply because we need the most severe drought classes to contribute more to our final value. What are we calculating here? A drought hazard index. But for example, experiencing an extreme drought does not have the same impact on our ecosystem compared to experiencing a moderate drought or a normal condition, for example. So that is why we have set our weight values fixed in this order, so that the most severe classes contribute more to the final drought hazard value. And now, regarding the ratings, the value of the ratings, I'm going to explain you the methodology that we are following to calculate, to assign these rating values in our drought classes. So these values actually depend from the comparison of the recent occurrence frequency of droughts. So we quantify the percentage of occurrence of each drought class occurring in our recent period. I will explain what do we mean by the recent period in the next slide, compared to the historical tendency. Okay, the only rating value which is fixed and specifically is equal to 1 is the rating value of the normal condition. So here the first term regarding the normal condition is a multiplication of 1 multiplied by 1. So this is the only rating value that is fixed. And why is that? Because our index is designed to penalize drought conditions. We're not interested to check whether normal conditions have occurred more or less frequently compared to the past. We're only interested for the different drought classes. So that is why specifically for normal conditions, we have our rating value equal to 1. Now, which is the methodology to define the different ratings of the other 3 drought classes? First of all, as I mentioned before, I defined our historical period. Okay, so our historical period ranges from 1961 to 1990. So we calculate, first of all, the SPEI index during this period. That's what I mean by saying the historical data. Okay, these are the monthly SPEI values that we have calculated for this period. And we use these values to determine what constitutes the low, medium, or high occurrence percentages for each drought class at a given location. Now, based on this data, we calculate some thresholds, and we use these thresholds to assess whether a drought severity class that occurs recently occurs more or less frequently compared to the past, compared to the historical period. Now, which are the steps that we are following? As I mentioned, we calculate SPI for our historical period. And if you remember, each monthly value of SPI is classified into a drought class. So in this 30-year period, we calculate the percentage of occurrence, the total counts divided by the total values in this time series, and we extract the percentage of occurrence of each class. Okay, then the first threshold is assigned to the least frequent category, which is usually the extreme drought, and the next least frequent category, which is usually the severe drought, gets the second threshold on a cumulative way, and so on. So just for you to understand this better, let's assume that we have the historical SPI data, and this data yields the following results. We detected an occurrence of extreme drought and at 4%, severe drought were 9%, and moderate droughts were 50%, which is the least frequent class, extreme droughts. Okay, we detected 4%, so the first threshold for extreme drought is equal to 0.04. In this value, we add the 0.09 since we detected a 9% of occurrence for severe droughts. So this way we get the threshold of the severe drought, and so on until we get the threshold of moderate drought. So now in this part we have calculated our thresholds. Okay, why we need these thresholds? Because against these thresholds we will evaluate the drought occurrence percentage in recent conditions. And according to this comparison, we will get our final rating values. Now, specifically, our recent period is actually the last year. So we have the 12 most recent SPI values, okay, again, monthly values. And these 12 values, these 12 latest SPI values constitute our recent period. Now, in this 12-month period, we proceed to calculate the percentage of occurrence of our classes, which are the P of DCI. DCI is the different drought class, moderate, severe, or extreme. And according to these conditions here, we calculate the different ratings, okay, 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the results, for each drought class. So now that we have calculated in this way the different rating values for the 3 drought classes, we can return to our formula and calculate the raw DHI value. Now, which is the best case scenario, that for the 3 drought classes, the rating value is equal to 1. If you do the math, you will realize that in this case, DHI is equal to 10, which is the worst case scenario, that all the ratings are equal to 4. Again, if you do the math, you will get a DHI of 37. Okay, so then we normalize this value using the classic normalization formula, where from the DHI value, we subtract the minimum value and divide by the maximum minimum. So our final value of this index is the normalized value ranging from 0 to 1. If our value is close to 0 to 1, we have a great risk, we have a great drought hazard. Otherwise, if our value is closer to 0, then we have not significant drought hazard. And this index is updated on a monthly basis. So each time that we have a new SPI monthly value, we use a 12-month rolling window, so that each time we include the 12 most recent values. So each month the DHI calculation is updated. And why we need this value, which is the contribution? Because this index is one of the 3 parameters that we use to calculate the VAI, which is the Vulnerability Assessment Index that Mr. Anastasiades presented before. You might recall that here there was a parameter F in his presentation. F is the same with DHI. Okay, just to I mentioned that just to clarify. So DHI is the parameter F, and here I have a visualization, just an example, so that we see the response of our index to the drought conditions. So here with the blue line, we have the time series of the SPI index. As I said before, its value is translated into a drought class. So for example, here with the red circles, you can see some values that are lower than -2. And if you recall the classification criteria, these are extreme drought. This is an indication of extreme droughts. Okay, so for these extreme droughts, we can see that our index responds and gets a high value. Or on the other hand, we have here some consecutive years where SPI suggests that we have normal conditions, and we can see that indeed the drought hazard index, the value here is lower. So that's how this index contributes in vulnerability assessment. As I mentioned before, a value close to 1 means that we have a high drought risk. So obviously this leads to an increase of the VAI. On the other hand, when this value is close to 0, we have no drought risk at all. So this leads to a lower value of VAI. So that's just one of the 3 parameters that we use to assess the vulnerability. As Mr. Anastasiades mentioned before, he did a brief presentation on how we evaluate D and A based on the different questionnaires that we use in the platform. And VAI, if VAI is greater than 1, then we have an area vulnerable to drought. If not, then we have a better adaptive capacity of our ecosystem. So that's the idea. That was my presentation, so that you got a better sense of the methodology that we use to evaluate the drought conditions in our pilot, and how this evaluation is connected with the VAI index, which is what we measure actually in our platform. So yeah, that's all from me. I would like to thank you for your attention, and of course, if you have any questions or you need any kind of clarifications, I will be happy to discuss further. Thank you.
Mr. Samoris, for the detailed informative presentation. We have now reached the end of the presentation part of today's webinar. We'll now put the floor for questions and discussion. We have several questions in the QA actually, so I kindly invite all speakers to join us on screen, and participants feel free to also submit your questions to the QA as we discuss those that have been already submitted. So let's go question by question. The few initial ones have already been answered by Vincenzo, but of course, if we have time, we will also discuss it as well here in the questions. Let's go question by question. One of the first ones, I think it was during Dr. Molinari's presentation, is what are the main barriers public authorities face when trying to procure natural-based solutions? So I think you briefly discussed this, but they have also connected it with how does the Germ of Life platform help overcome them? So if you can briefly take on the barriers, and then we will hear from Mr. Colombo on the actions that we're doing at Germ of Life.
Yes, thanks for the question. I will try to be quick for the sake of the others. I already, as you mentioned, presented some of those barriers in detail, and you can still make reference to my presentation. But in a single sentence, to clarify my thought in full, the point we need to tackle as soon as possible to give a future to MBS in public procurement is that in too many cases, these solutions are treated as standardized products, while they are not. So the big risk, which is also a big gap, is that we are buying a bicycle to go fast to New York, or a car to go from Europe to Australia. And we do not understand, because we as the procurers don't have sufficient support in terms of technical specifications, harmonized specifications, a best practice database, a collection of inspiring examples from other contexts. We don't know enough to decide what we want. And we are tempted to treat the issue as if it was a standard procurement process, buying a bicycle to go to New York.
This clear answer, I think. It also connects with a new question that we have, but let's hear from Mr. Colombo first on how does Germ of Life platform can help overcome this kind of barriers. I don't know. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Panagiotta. Yeah, actually, it's true. And this is the main barrier and the drawback we try to address in this project. Okay, we didn't want to enter into the tender procedure because this is quite technical and customized to each procurement organization. But I think what is here, the value added of this application is to try to standardize as much as possible the process of collecting information, technical information, data-driven information from the supplier that are not much the ones that are dealing with so custom solutions. That's why they need more information. and this is for the suppliers, no, for the one that offer the solution. But on the other hand, also for the procurers, to have a driver, a way to guide them into what is each for each ecosystem that is addressed, for each problem area that is addressed, to give them a selection of what is there, and whenever is matchable with the solution provider, to give them a possibility to interact, as Dr. Molinari say, the conversation, enabling a conversation, a data-driven, technical-driven, trying to decrease the barriers, the terminologies, and to let them understand each other with information from the field or from the sky, satellite, and we have satellite, we have ground information, sensors, and this information must be matched with the solution. And to do this, the platform enable this process.
I think, Sukolubo, you also partially answered the next question that was how does our platform, the innovation procurement platform, the Germ of Life, support authorities that are not familiar with this innovation procurement processes? So you mentioned the guides, you mentioned how it is accessible as well. So pretty much that is the main point of view of why we have created this platform.
and also language. Language is a barrier, and we made an attempt to propose something, to reuse something that today everyone is using in any generative AI solution, but here is instrumental to understand complex terminologies and to translate into languages for public procurers. So this is also an additional benefit of this solution.
I think we will have one last question on procurement because there are also in the co-design process. So what I think from the question, the most intriguing one is, what are the most common mistakes made by public authorities when they're trying to procure nature-based solutions? And if possible, can we say a few words on how they can avoid them? I don't know, Dr. Molinari, if you want to take the floor on this one, and then we can go back on Matteo.
Okay, let me rephrase the question before answering, because it would be misleading to speak of mistakes if the procedure is successfully finalized. You may know that in Italy, but also in other countries, a huge share of the procedures, of the procurement procedures, end up into a litigation in front of a court. So the pathology of procurement is that one. If a procurement officer working for a city has a good record of successful awards, nobody can reasonably speak of mistakes. But paradoxically, that is also the reason why we are facing these issues. Because in many cases, what prevents from the risk of making those mistakes, which end up into a litigation, is exactly the compliance with the standard approaches that we have always been pushing forward, more or less in the same way without many changes, and sometimes also reiterating business relationships with the same incumbent providers. So paradoxically, the safe road, what is less prone to that kind of mistake that would bring the administration in front of a court, is also the main obstacle to thinking with an open mind and to make examples of what these additional consideration of elements which are not presided over by the standard procedures of procurement can be about. Think in terms of life cycle of the solutions being deployed, not limited to the cost and maybe the revenue, including non-monetary revenue of installing, deploying, a specific solution now, but also the long-term costs and benefits due to the maintenance needs of the solution that we have deployed, which may not be that visible in the documentation provided by the different competitors if we don't ask them for that information. And this is why the dialogue, the negotiation, the conversational approach, which is legal, but normally people are afraid of that because they are afraid that someone may say that some differential information was shared during one of those dialogues, leading to some winner instead of another winner. But that approach is the right one because it is by sharing the contents of a bid, especially under the technical point of view, but including the long-term impacts, only in that way we can improve the visibility of what the global cost of deployment is about. That also as a way, this is another project I'm involved in, but I don't want to open too many windows, also as a way to find additional finance in support of the solution. There is a statistic, a tremendous statistic, saying that only 3% of nature-based solutions currently being deployed are financially supported by non-public resources. There must be a reason for that. The revenue, even the non-monetary revenue in terms of well-being, reduced recourse to hospitalization, or people who are happier because they have their own green spaces to live within. All these benefits are hardly quantified or quantifiable if you don't take the forward-looking perspective, which is currently prevented by the vision that the safe road is the one that protects your interest against a litigation in front of a court.
Dr. Monire, I hope this answers the question, at least at some point, so we all understand how this can work. Let's answer one final question because we are supposed to be finishing right now, and let's go back to the co-design process. There are a few questions that were answered in the chat in the QA, so thank you, Mr. Di Maria, for that. But also there is a new one, so because we discussed that we had input from different pilots and from different stakeholders, there is a question specifically on how do you manage situations from different stakeholders having conflicting priorities during co-design processes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. As I said before in the previous answer, co-design, it's a flexible approach that can be adapted to the needs of different projects. Some projects are multi-stakeholder, multi-agenda project. There is a clear, transparent public agenda, and there is a hidden agenda that usually comes to life in the sort of generative co-design sessions. What we do as designers, we're trying to visualize and making as most objective as possible this specific agendas or intentions or needs from the different partners and putting them on the wall or on the digital board in order for everybody to see that. So we kind of point at the elephant in the room, or we say the king is naked. So we show them that there are actually conflicting agenda. By showing them this process of making things so visible and creating artifacts that objectifies the things, it's a way to talk around them. It's a way to work together to get these agendas, get priorities. So we treat them not as attached to the ego of the participant or to the role or to the hierarchy within the project, but we treat them as information. That's why post-it notes could be useful sometime, because we detach the owner of that specific agenda to what is this agenda about? Let's talk about the needs required by that specific user in that specific context. And every agenda is potentially a good agenda, unless it's a negative agenda, of course. At that point, will be clear to everyone that that's not the way forward. We're trying to create common grounds between people. And as we say in the Germs of Life, we're trying to get a consistent initial data set of indicators that could be suitable for any kind of project, any kind of region. But as the case studies demonstrated, is yes, there must be this sort of common domains and set of indicators, but then can I customize my own? And can the software and the platform respond to my own specific needs? At that point, we're trying to design around those needs, and that became some sort of design requirement. So it is possible, it is normal to have different opinion or different agenda or even diverging, but that's the magic of co-design. Try to see what we care and we share, and where we think differently, how can that be accommodated or not?
Right. Sorry for your answer, and of course, thank you to everyone from our speakers for engaging in this brief discussion toward the end of our webinar. Your feedback is extremely valuable, and of course, I will forward you any other questions that we still have pending. And I'm asking all the participants that if there are any relevant questions during the next few days, and once this webinar is also online, feel free to share it with us, and we will include the speakers to the conversation. So before we close, I would like also to mention and briefly look ahead that the next Germ of Life webinar will focus on the full demonstration of the Germ of Life platform. That will include the whole process of the vulnerability assessment tool, so the platform itself in our website, and of course the innovation procurement platform that was shown earlier today, bringing together all the elements introduced in today's and the previous session. Also, we will take a look at our two remaining pilots, the one in Spain and the one in Portugal. So we have all the information related to the project. So we invite you to join us again and contribute to this learning journey. It will be, as mentioned at the beginning of February, and we will decide on the date in the coming weeks. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation, your attention, and your contribution to today's webinar. On behalf of the University of Patras and the entire Germ of Life Consortium, I would like to thank you, all speakers and the participants once again, and have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you in the next Germ of Life webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.